So I like this, that you're targeting a group of, I think, young men who are feeling kind of disaffected, unloved, undervalued, and you're very open about the fact that they should be catered to. And actually, I heard in your article something I didn't know existed, which was the tech right.
Oh, yes. I think that was a phrase who knows who coins these things? People always claim, ownership of a coinage, but I started referring to it as that recently. I mean, I think that it just became very obvious that was what was happening. Once Elon took Twitter, and the sort of censorship ended and the false amplification of different stories ended, and people just started talking more. And I'd been sort of saying a bit more before that, feeling sort of isolated, but suddenly it was very apparent there was a lot of support, and it was not what we'd previously thought, and you didn't aim for it, especially now that it's in the White House.
Did we think tech was all left?
I think tech employees definitely skew left. You can just look at the numbers in terms of political donations and things like that. It definitely overwhelmingly skews left, but among the people who actually build things, so like founders of companies, both at the startup level and then at the sort of executive level of the giant companies, the publicly traded companies, there's just plenty of support for, I would say, common sense, pro-business, pro-technology type policies, which we just didn't really see any of under the Biden administration. In fact, you saw really, while Elon took over Twitter, took it private, you saw the Biden administration really kind of go after the technology industry. And once that happened, it was like, well, where do you go? And I think that you had people like David Sachs out there waving his flag, and
love him.
Peter Thiel, my boss previously, like for years, like kind of
he put himself out there early on Trump.
Yes, and then you had Elon, and it was just like very easy suddenly, or not easy, but much easier than ever before for someone who disagreed with a lot of the sort of deranged excesses of the far left that you had seen before that, to stand up and say, I don't agree with that shit. That's not what I'm here for.
What do you make of, so this reminds me, I am fascinated by the fact that, of course, all the tech executives showed up to the inauguration. But did you see Mark Zuckerberg's comments about Sheryl Sandberg? He blamed her for the wokeness at Meta, reportedly, and said she was the one responsible for tampons in the men's room, and all that shit is done. He's doing the jujitsu, he grew the hair out, he's pro-Trump. Like, what a shift. By the way, there's a report in the news today that some rogue employees at Facebook or Meta did put tampons back in the men's room, but it's no longer company sanctioned.
Yes.
It's their act of civil disobedience. But I thought that was actually very interesting. I mean, that those two, they were very tight for a long time, and they're,
It is interesting. I think a lot of people want to not believe that, and they want to believe that Mark's lying or something. And I understand it. It's like, well, he was in charge. He could have just changed things or whatever. He was a young guy when he met Sheryl, who was much older and wiser, you would think. Who knows? I don't know him, and I don't know what was happening with them. I know that I believe where he is right now. I believe that when I first started writing Pirate Wires, before it was a company, back when it was just me writing, I covered his hospital. He donated a lot of money to a hospital in San Francisco, and the city government had decided to rename. It was named after him. They were going to take it back at the height. It was 2020. It was like the country had de facto legalized rioting. It was like at the height of the insanity at that point. And I think that really was a pilling moment for him. It was that, plus he had people inside of the Zuckerberg Chan, I think it's called the Initiative, is their nonprofit, who demanded that he resign at that point over whatever invented crimes of racism had existed at that time. He had never done anything. He was just this guy trying to run his company. And I think that was the beginning, but he had no friends. I mean, everybody was isolated back then. My sense, as someone who talked to a lot of people, was that everybody sort of agreed, but nobody would say anything. Right. And he was one of them. And he also had the pressure of the entire state bearing down on him, because he was seen as this speech platform, I think seen correctly as this very important speech platform. So I think he was maybe scared, and I want to give him some grace. I think at the end of the day, what he stands for now publicly, I am aligned with, and I'm rooting for him.
And we need him.
Yes.
We need him.
Yes.
We need as many strong soldiers on this side of the aisle as we can get.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting. I went out to the All-In Summit in September, late September, and Elon was there, and all the guys were there from the All-In podcast. And it was all tech guys in the audience, some gals, but it was mostly male. Young, I would say mostly in their young 30s, mid 30s maybe. And I couldn't believe how right-leaning they seemed.
Yeah.
I was saying all the things I say, on gender, I ripped on Kamala Harris's intelligence, like all the stuff. I defended Trump on the law affair. They kept clapping, like a lot. I had the support of the crowd. And I was like, what is this place? What's happening out here? Like, this is supposed to be tech, which I think Kara Swisher tells me she's got her finger on the pulse and she's as left as they come.
She knows nothing. She has no idea what she's talking about. You're exactly right about the all-in crowd. And the thing about that show is those are very intelligent men. Sachs, I think, especially is an intellectual. And this attracts a sort of smart crowd of people, just this like, it's not just like this rah-rah sort of right-wing podcast at all. It's like a kind of thoughtful tech business show. And I always had good experience with people in San Francisco. It's like this kind of strange idea that people find surprising. I think there were a lot of people in San Francisco who just like an intellectual, and that's what they gravitate towards. And they're going to listen to people. And they weren't really visible because nobody was allowing them to speak before, and nobody was producing content for them. When I started writing, I wasn't looking for a male audience. I was just like, I can't stand what I'm seeing anymore, and I need to say something. And I was protected because I worked and still work for Peter. And it's like, well, if I have this much protection and I'm not saying anything, like, who is going to say something?
Yeah.
I have to say something.
But it's sad to me to think of, by the way, my EP wants me to remind everybody that Jason and Chamath are going to be on the podcast a week from today.
Let's go.
But I think it's sad because when you're in Republican circles, it's hard enough. Before let's go before the election, before Trump won again, and before Elon came out on the campaign trail. It's hard enough if you have a big business or you're an up and comer in a very left leaning industry to show your politics or be open at all about what your political leanings are. But it's gone beyond that for so long to where young men not only had to say the right things, right, like had to hide their politics if they were all right leaning, but had to be shamed just for being male.
Yeah.
That's it. And never mind if you're white male, forget about it. And that, we can laugh like, oh, it's so stupid, but it actually really has done a number on like an entire generation. And it's such bullshit.
Yes. Yeah. It's male behavior specifically. So you could see people starting to freak out about a character who was getting more attention online. Maybe it was Elon Musk or something before Elon was revealing any of his politics, just because of there's like a cadence to the way he speaks, or he's using some words like that are kind of bro-y. Anything that was masculine coded was attacked. It was considered suspicious immediately. Even just competitiveness. I think back to Travis Kalanick, who got railroaded at a time when he had no support in the technology industry. I mean, you can look back. I was tweeting about it, but I had no followers back then. So sorry, Travis. I wasn't.
Just give me one. He wrote that women engineers.
He didn't write anything. Travis ran Uber.
Sorry, I'm confusing him with
James
the other
Damore.
guy. Yeah, okay.
Hashtag fired for truth.
Right.
He was just in a very Asperger-y way, kind of like talking about the bell curve of distributions or something.
Okay. Yeah. Like, Travis, I watched the Uber.
Right. So Travis, I mean, he gets railroaded. I think really for acting like a man, like he was considered too aggressive and things, and it was very weird, kind of following that. Just the unapologetic maleness of him at a time when you did have people who were much softer and acting much softer. And I think that's just, at this point, I don't know if it's over. I just know that you're allowed to be a guy now. And when I started writing, yes, it was like a lot of men started following me, but I didn't set out to do that. And I don't even now. Right?
But it's innate. It's innate. And that when they saw you saying the things and writing the things that they knew to be true, it would be a natural gravitation to hear more of it, to read more of it. And now I feel like they've been empowered. And there's some women who are like, well, we don't want them to be empowered to the point where they're all Andrew Tate. Right. Like that's too far.
Andrew Tate was only popular because nobody else was saying the few reasonable things that he was saying. So he's this, I think, very bad person, actually.
Agreed.
And he would also say things like wokeness is stupid. And everyone's like, yes, well, thank you for someone for saying it. And so he was rewarded because none of the good men would say anything. And so I'm like, that's the reason. And I think that actually the star will continue to diminish now that the Overton window is broadened enough where the things that he was saying that were actually important can be said by anybody.
We continue to face uncertainty when it comes to the economy, with a perfect storm brewing as Social Security and Medicare hit a breaking point as the largest generation is hitting retirement. A smaller workforce means a smaller tax base. You pair that with our growing national debt and our rising cost of living, and we could have a very big problem on our hands. So what are you doing now to protect your family for the future? Are you diversifying? Gold can be very useful to you in this. It can be a safe haven in hard economic times. And Birch Gold has a super great reputation, and they will make it very easy to diversify a portion of your savings, if you so choose, into physical gold. Birch Gold will help you transition an existing IRA or 401k in whole or in part into an IRA in gold, and it will not cost you 1 cent out of pocket. Protect your future today. Text MK to 989898 and get your free info kit on gold and a copy of The Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation, just information. Birch Gold has earned the trust of countless Americans looking to safeguard their savings. You just text my initials, MK, to the number 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.